Okay, hey everybody, we are back. On the Air with Indian River Hauntings has returned. I'm Larry Lawson, your host. I'm here with my good friend and co-host Chris Huff in County Durham, England. Say hi, Chris.
He is indeed. He's here.
And we are back for another great show. Been looking forward to it. I think you're going to enjoy what we're doing tonight. But a few things first. I want to give some shout outs first to our good friend Ike Enzi of IDK Paranormal. We want to say hi to Ike. I want to say hi to Sherry and Nikki from Doodlebug Dowsing. And of course, our friend at Pareidolia Brewery, Mr. Pete Anderson, and I will be tasting one of his beers again on this show in just a couple of moments. So we'll get to that in a second. Christopher, do you got anybody you want to say hi to?
Anybody who knows me, especially Paul up in Scotland, top end of Scotland.
Okay.
And Gary down on the Isle of Wight, and Deb over in France, because they're always tuning in and they're lovely to me.
You said Deb over in France?
Yeah, Deborah over in France.
Yeah. She puts on a good show about European Bigfoot.
Yep.
That's the best way for me to put. Oh, want to say hi to Will Lindsay too over in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
has he been in touch?
He has been in touch. Yes,
excellent.
He has. So now with that out of the way, I am going to crack open.
He's going to go for it. What one's this?
This is Flow Cone. It's a pale ale at 6.2. So this will be our beer challenge. And this, what do you call that critter?
Well, that's a niffler.
Niffler. Okay, here we go.
Don't spray the screen.
I'm going to try not to. Oh, there we go. It has been. Oh, I sprayed me.
Excellent.
All right.
A little bit of eau de cologne, eh?
Yeah, eau de cologne. Oh, very nice.
Which one's this?
This is Flow Cone Pale Ale at 6.2.
They do pile on the percentage, don't they?
Yeah, whoa. This one's a little milder than what I usually drink. It's got a nice, very American beer taste to it, but it's nice and smooth. That's very tasty.
You've got to remember, the only beers that I've tasted from America over here have been Budweiser.
No. This is not Budweiser.
It honestly tastes like soap suds. Tastes like washing up liquid soap suds.
This is a typical Pareidolia Brewery concoction. It is smooth. It is very tasty, and they brew it themselves. This is their own concoction. Again, Pareidolia's Flow Cone Pale. They are in Sebastian, Florida, and Pete Anderson, his wife, own that establishment, and that's quite a good tasting beer. So excellent. Thank you, Pete. Thank you. So today, what are we talking about? We're talking about
our favorite things.
You mean our favorite investigations, events?
Our favorite things that have happened to us, our experiences, weird and wonderful, and the things that go bump that make us think, what on earth was that? And the first one, I want to hear about the piano, because that's my favorite story of yours.
Well, that happened to also be at the Pareidolia Brewery.
Well, there you go.
So, Pete had invited us to come over and investigate the brewery. Now, the brewery itself is in an old post office, and when I say old, it was only built in the early 1960s, late 50s, right in that area. I'd have to pull out the dates to give it to you. But based upon our historical research, there was not any other building on that piece of property. Okay. So this was the first thing ever built on, and it was plotted out in Sebastian, and they built it, and it was a post office up through, I want to say, the early 80s. And then it was sold by the U.S. Postal Service. They built a new post office, and it became a hardware store for a long time. Now, you have to understand, in this country, a lot of post offices, they're like cookie cutters. They look pretty much the same, especially during that period. Their construction looks all similar. So you look right at it, and you can tell it was a post office at one time. So it later became a hardware store, and then it became a marine and hardware store. And then it was sold just, I don't know, 10 10 years ago, maybe a little less. And it sat there for a while. And then finally, about 3 years ago, I want to say, a gentleman bought it, and Pete leased it to put his brewery in. The Pareidolia Brewery. By the way, Pareidolia, what an interesting name that is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't know what pareidolia means, it's a very important term in the world of paranormal research and investigation, because pareidolia means that you can either have visual or audio, and that's where you're visual. You look at something and you think you see a face looking out a window, or you
bushes.
think that's the bushes,
classic.
or bushes. And what it is,
or in orbs, the smiley faces in orbs.
Orbs, that's another good spot. What it is you're looking at it, and your brain is trying to figure out what it's seeing, and it's looking at the pixelization of what it's looking at, and it oftentimes sees a face or a figure, and it's really not there, but your brain is kind of seeing it. I guess that's the easiest way to put it, and the term is called pareidolia, and we have to look out for that all the time in paranormal research, so we don't mistake or put a label on something that's really not accurate. And sometimes
but too often the skeptics will come in and say everything you see is pareidolia.
Well, there's always an extreme on both sides, but that's the one thing about what we try to do is we try to keep it balanced. We look at it, and if we cannot debunk it any other way, then we can determine it's paranormal. But anyway, the name of the brewery is Pareidolia, so I just find it interesting, and particularly interesting with the story that you're telling me, or that I'm telling you. So he had some problems in there. Things were coming off of walls. Shadows had been seen. In particular, there was a bathroom where supposedly a woman was found past dead in there a number of years ago. No historical reference to it, just one of those urban legends. But Pete had some problems with, like I said, plates coming off of walls, shadows, stuff happening back in the brewery that he couldn't explain, noises. At one time in particular, when they were just building it, he and the owner of the building were working on the brewer equipment in the back, and they heard a loud crash, like a vehicle had crashed through the building, and they come running out. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So they asked us to come in. And the interesting thing about this investigation, it was done early in the morning. See, he goes until about 11 o'clock at night, and it's tough. That's why it's kind of tough to do bars, because they're open, So, and he said most of his activity was in the morning, so we ended up going about 7 o'clock in the morning and investigating. And it was the first. We've been in there 3 times now. The last time, I do believe, was with you.
It was indeed.
But this is the first time that we were in there, that this event happened. So several members of my team were sitting at some of the tables inside the establishment, and they were conducting an EVP session. Well, I was videotaping it with my camera and watching it, and I was maybe that far off of a wall, maybe even like that. I mean, hardly any room at all. Right directly behind me was a ukulele hanging on the wall, little tiny guitar ukulele. And I'm videotaping my crew doing the EVP session, and I suddenly hear ding, 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 or something like that, piano notes. I am no musician, but I know what a piano sounds like. And I looked to everybody and said, "Did you guys hear that?" And they said, "No, what? I didn't hear anything." "You didn't hear those musical notes?" "No, we didn't hear a thing." So I said, I heard it. I'm going to check the camera. So I rolled the camera back, and while I heard maybe 3, 4 notes, when I played it back, there was like 6 or 7 notes. Mm-hmm. Unmistakably a piano. And I turned around, I strummed the strings on the ukulele.
Not that.
Not even similar. Okay. Here's the kicker. There's never been a piano in that building. Now, everybody heard the recording when I played it back. Everybody could hear it on the camera, but they did not hear it when it happened. Only I did. Mm-hmm. But it was picked up on the camera. Now, I find that interesting as a quick sidebar, in that at that moment in time, was it because I was holding the camera? both my vibrations and that of the camera in the same frequency. So whatever came through, I not only heard it, but the camera heard it, but nobody else can. I mean, I don't know. But I heard the notes, the camera caught the notes, nobody else in the place got it. And yeah, that's to this day one of the most unexplained things.
It's one of my favorites of yours. It's got to be said. It's one of my because it filled so many sort of oddity gaps.
Well, and there's never been any record of a piano being in that building.
Oh.
So it's not even an imprint. So where did it come from? So and it begs the question. There was no building there prior to it. So it wasn't like an old honky tonk was built there prior to it. For the best that we can tell in all the records, it was vacant land till they put the post office on it. So what was that?
Well, as I say, spirits come in.
Yeah.
Things happen. It doesn't have to have happened on that place in the past.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people have a great deal of trouble getting their head around this, that it doesn't have to have happened there.
Exactly. Now, going forward, the last time you were in there, unfortunately, you were with my team, but I couldn't make it. You actually saw a cat, and then Pete was able to.
The cat was interesting because, well, backing up a little bit, I was asking Spanky about the woman in the men's toilets.
Right.
The old woman in the men's toilets, because she was in, and she wasn't very happy with it being turned into a brewery. But that's sort of an aside, and I think that's where the problems with various bits of brewing comes from. Is that she seemed to be one of these sort of old school madams who really didn't like beer and people drinking beer and.
Well, you know, I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of the early postmasters there was a woman.
Right. No.
So I don't know. I don't think I ever told you.
I was sitting down with Spanky and just listening, and all I could hear was tinkle, 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 tinkle. You know the sound of a cat running across the floor? Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. And then there was this
with a bell on
a blue collar. And the bell appeared, and it was doing ticka, 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 ticka as it ran through.
How was that again?
Dinga, 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 dinga. Yeah, you got that one.
I do know.
But so, I like that story. It was an interesting place, and I hope we're going back sometime.
Well, as you know, I'm doing a live radio show here in the States on WPSL Radio 1590, and Pete is sponsoring some of the shows, so he's going to be on my show next week as we talk about his haunted brewery, and I'll make arrangements to get us back there.
That's excellent, because I want to go back there and see if I can pick up on anything else there.
Okay, really good.
You talking about your piano, I've got a interesting one of my own involving piano or piano-like, and that was at Crook Hall, which is on the outskirts of the city of Durham. I can't take you there because it's just gone bust as a business and is in being sold. I was just doing my usual, walking around, and I got to the Minstrels Gallery in the old hall, and I thought, I'm going to stop here and take a recording. In the days before I had a video camera, just an audio, just a little handheld audio, and I heard absolutely nothing while I was there, and I mean nothing. Couldn't even hear birds singing outside. There was no one else walking around. This is in a slightly out of the way area. No one. Must have been 10, 15 minutes of nothing. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, I just sort of went, turned it off and said to myself, well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it? So put it into the drawer somewhere, and about 3 or 4 years later, I had to listen to it. Not only have I got voices everywhere on it, just EVPs. They're not Spirit Box, just EVPs.
Right.
There's also the sound of a piano. I think it sounds like a woman's voice combined with the piano. And it's like a 16th century hymn. And I'll be putting it up online about here, and it will go in. And then at the end of this, there was footsteps in heels walking off up the gallery and into the other building. And
Really?
right at the end, before I turned it off, there was a very deep male voice. Get out of my hall.
Alrighty then.
Alrighty then. That was a really good one, but nothing at the time. I didn't pick, I'm usually seeing things. I picked up nothing apart from down at the doorway. It didn't feel too good downstairs, but not seeing anyone. But this came out on the recording, so it's exactly the same as yours. It came out on the recording.
Interesting, and I truly believe, Chris, and this is just my opinion, that if we get a break, now you're able to see and do certain things, but average Joes like me that don't have that ability, that's going to be the spot. That's EVPs, or instrumental transcommunication, of which EVPs are a part of, are going to be the area I think we're going to get our break, where we're going to find.
Thought it's the best evidence you can get.
Yeah, because now I'm really starting to believe that things have to be in line, frequency and vibration wise, for us to connect. But I think that's gonna be where we're gonna get our break. I mean, even you felt something, but you didn't experience anything psychically. Okay.
No. I was less in tune then.
Right.
It's a long while back. It's what, 15, 20 years back.
I
was less in tune. I was very unsure of myself, and you're just picking up on things rather than really opening and let it flood you.
Sure.
So,
but there you go. You got it on tape, and that just speaks volumes of the theory of frequency and vibration in EVPs. So that's a cool story.
It's definitely the way forward. It's definitely the way forward.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Very, very interesting story.
It's your turn. What's your
My
next
turn? Well, I gotta tell you the story how this whole thing started for me. I do tell a story of when I was a young corrections officer working in the county jail in Miami, Florida, when I first started my police career, of seeing a figure walking down one of the cell blocks, and then they were gone. But that really isn't. That was my first real experience, but that's not what started all this. What happened was in 2010, my oldest, no, I'm sorry, it was 2009 maybe, no? Late 2009, early 2010, right that area. My oldest boy wanted to go to St. Augustine for his birthday. Ryan, you remember Ryan? He was our engineer.
Ryan.
He was our engineer.
He's a good lad.
Yes, and Ryan joined me in England when I was there to see you. He wanted to go to the St. Augustine lighthouse. Now, St. Augustine, for my friends over in Europe, it's the oldest city in the United States. In Florida, which is a relatively new state, so it's kind of an oxymoron. St. Augustine is the oldest city in the United States, and it was founded by the Spaniards back in the 1500s. And it's quite a haunted city, quite a history. The lighthouse there was reputed to but is haunted by several folks, and particularly 3 young ladies. They died during the construction of the lighthouse. 2 of them, I believe, were the construction foreman's daughters. They died on some tracks that were used to bring supplies up from the water, because back in the 1800s there were no roads down that far, so everything was brought in by water. And they were killed while playing on these tracks, and they've reputed to have been haunting that lighthouse. Well, we got up there, and there was an old ghost hunter show, one of the original ghost hunter shows, where they saw a specter. I could still see the episode, shoulders and heads. They had a camera looking up the middle of the lighthouse like that, and around the spiral stairway to the top, and they got a figure popping over and looking. Fraction of a second later, it was 2 flights up looking down. A fraction of a second later, it was looking down again. Never, to my knowledge, has ever been debunked, but it was a pretty cool event. Well, Ryan really wanted to go there. So we did, and we took this Dark of the Moon tour. That is the name of the tour they have in the place, and we enjoyed it. A little bit crowded, like a lot of those types of tours are, but we enjoyed it. So we said, let's do it a second time. So we took the second tour that came up a couple hours later, and the guy running it said, look, you guys have done this once, and this is a smaller group, so I'll tell you what. you guys can have the lighthouse to yourself. I'll take everybody into the lightkeeper's house first. Awesome. So Ryan and I had the lightkeeper's house all to ourselves for, what, an hour or so.
Excellent.
And we're on the 3rd or 4th floor, and we start hearing the little girls laughing. Unmistakable. Well, at that point, I wasn't where I am today. First thing I'm looking for are speakers and wires. Somebody must be, piping this in here. And I'm looking, and there's no speaker or wires anywhere. This was legitimate. And that story is what began me on my journey now, because I realized what I had experienced was not, it was not something of this world. There was something else caused it. So that's how the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation, and from there, Indian River Hauntings was born. Now,
and that was when?
About late 2009.
So you're getting quite an old hand at this.
Yeah, we've been investigating as a team for over a decade now. So we're starting to find our sea legs, as it were.
Yeah, you're starting to gel as a group. And it's a lovely group, by the way, everyone. It's a lovely group.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because you join us on a number of our investigations now. And I'll pass this out for you folks, and I hope you don't mind, Chris. But Chris now joins us on our FBPI investigations via Skype, and the results have been magnificent. And there's going to be some videos of our investigations that are being produced right now by a local TV station that will be going up on YouTube. And when they do, you're going to see Chris in action. So I'm just kind of a side note there to get everybody's.
You'll find me at the top of the stairs hanging from a rope of embarrassment.
No, not all. They're pretty spectacular, the one. And I'm not going to embarrass Chris by telling that, and I don't mean embarrass in a bad way. The stuff that he has produced has been verified and has been spectacular. So when those videos come out and they're on YouTube, watch for them. But anyway, we ended up going back there a couple of other times, and there was another time that we were out there, and we were there with some family friends, and we were inside the lighthouse again, and we came down, and suddenly the door was shut. And the folks that we were with were sitting outside on the bench, and they saw something shoot, like running in front of them, but it was like a blur. And right after that, the door shut on the lighthouse, and we couldn't get out. We were locked in. They had to call the lighthouse attendants there to unlock the door. And I remember talking to the young lady that said, "This can't happen. See this latch on the door? This doesn't shut unless we put the key in, or it doesn't come out unless we put the key in it," and that's what locked you in. So St. Augustine is a very historical spot, very creepy, and very, very haunted. Especially go to the lighthouse.
Unfortunately, very full of tourists.
That's the downside to it. You got to know where to go. It's become a very commercialized city in so many ways, but the old city jail, the old county jail that's there, is well documented to be haunted past the tourists. The old fort there, Fort Castillo, is also very haunted. So there, yes, it's very touristy, but it's got some unbelievable things there too. So strongly recommended. Your turn.
What do you want? Do you want an airfield or a Roman building?
Oh wow! I always want airfields.
You want an airfield?
Okay. Give me an airfield. I just love your airfield stories.
And then we'll do the Roman one before we finish.
Very good.
RAF Tholthorpe, which is just 10 miles north of York, Canadian base during the Second World War.
They flew Halifaxes then.
They flew starting off with Wellingtons, onto Halifaxes, onto Lancasters. So okay. I was invited there by the Middlesbrough Paranormal Group, Paranormal Society, one of them. And I didn't know these people at all, but they were really friendly, and I really enjoyed myself. And we started off doing various things around the place, and I picked up on a certain amount of things. And then we went off down to the old hospital and the mortuary. And honestly, yeah, I felt people walking around, but there wasn't much going on. When we got back, we went into one of the other huts, and there'd been the noises of somebody walking up and down in this hut, and it's now used as a respraying hut for buses because it's a bus company depot. So they spray the buses. There was a bus in there being sprayed, and we were in there in the absolute pitch black because, hey, well, you know, that's what you do. And I was picking up on all sorts of things. You know, I was getting this blue C-shaped metal thing somebody was showing me, and I didn't have a clue what it was. When I got back, I looked it up, and it's called an English wheel. It's for fabricating the curves on aircraft and things.
Okay.
So they were showing me that, and then showing me other things, and there was somebody in there in a set of sort of brownish overalls, which I thought they'd be blue, but they were brown. And he was just whistling tunelessly. You know how annoying that is? Just the... And he's whistling away, and it's really getting on my nerves. And then he stopped, and it went quiet. And I was thinking, what is going on? And this flight sergeant marched in. And this is the guy who was causing the noises up and down. And he saw me, and he marched straight up to me, and he came there. You know what they're like? 3 inches away from your nose.
Yep.
What are you doing here? This is military base. You're not allowed to be here. Blah, 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 blah. F, 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 C, 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 F, 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 F. What the f. Whack! And I started bleeding from my lip.
Wow.
And all the others saw it, and it bled for about 30 seconds, just bleeding. After that, it was odd. He sort of did this, and then he sort of marched off up and down the hut going mumble, 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 and then he just went. But apparently, the chap who invited me there from the Middlesbrough group a week after also took a cut.
Really?
Yeah. So this guy is not very pleasant, but hey, anyway, they're not in there anymore. Someone else has got the building, so I can't get back in. But
oh, that's a shame. But what
that's
a story.
Shame, because I'd have taken you there if I could.
Now, how many times have you investigated cases or been involved in investigations where you actually had a physical connection like
physical
that?
As in now actually taking damage once. That's taking damage.
Right.
Pushed 3 or 4 times. Once at Edlingham Castle, which is up in Northumberland, where it's on multi-levels, and you walk over on this level and there's lower stuff next to it with about a 6 to 8 foot drop down. Yeah. And as I was walking over this little sort of causeway bit, something pushed me and I went tottering towards the edge.
Wow.
And then I actually heard kiddies going giggle, 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 giggle.
Oh my. Oh my.
I've been stabbed, not physically, but you walked past somewhere, and this was when I was about 15, walked past somewhere and whoa, oh, like a dagger going in.
Wow.
But little thing, but only once physical. Yeah, lots of mental. They do like surprising you. Yeah, they like getting that fear.
Yeah, I've not had that happen to me yet. So
we'll see what we can. We'll take you to Middleham Castle and see what we can do for you.
Okay. Well, my turn. We got time for one more story each.
One more each.
And I'm going back to England.
I want a good one.
Oh, this is one of my all-time favorites because it like a couple of things that you and I have done recently that I don't want to give away on here because they're going to see it. This really hit home for me, in not only because of the gravity of the past situation, but also, and I'll explain that in a minute, but also because, man, it's unequivocal that there is something else on out there. And this is at RAF Elvington. And I think we probably have mentioned on this show before, but since we're doing some of our top favorites, and I've got so many, but this one really meant a lot to me. And for those of you that have heard this story before, I apologize, but if you haven't, I think you'll find it very fascinating. So my son Ryan and I were in England visiting Chris. This is the summer of 2019.
Not long ago. It's terrible.
we were at RAF Elvington near York, and that was a Canadian base and then a French base.
Yeah,
well, it was Canadian first, though, right?
It's more French. Not for long. It went to French quite early.
Okay. And they were flying Halifaxes out of there. And I might add, when I got there, the tour guide that we met, his last name was Lawson. So we immediately had a connection, and I told him that my father was with the RAF during the Second World War, and that solidified the connection. And he actually got us to climb into and tour the interior of the Halifax they have in their museum. Oh my God, what an experience that was, to actually be inside of a Hadley Page Halifax. That was absolutely stupendous. So, but there's also a Quonset hut there that commemorates and is the museum for 609 Squadron. Now, 609 Squadron was based near there. I don't think they were at Elvington, but they were.
It's a fighter squadron. I can't tell you. It's County of Yorkshire Squadron. Or City of York. One of them. Something to do with York. So they've got the room
right.
to.
And I believe 609 was also in that area. They put them there. Well, at any rate, we're in the museum, and Chris is doing the things that Chris does, and we've got our recorders going. Our spirit boxes are going. And you hear the of the SP7 that we were using, and it might have been your 11. It might have, whatever it was one of our spirit boxes. It was yours. I didn't bring one with me. Right. And I hear Chris ask, "Can you give me your name?" And you suddenly hear Fury. No mistaking it. Fury. What rank are you? Sergeant. Sergeant Fury. Okay, we actually have a name. Once again, you hear it, you think it's cool, but you don't really know where it's going to take you. Well, then Chris does the research, sends me some photographs of a gravestone of a Sergeant Alan Fury, 609 Squadron, killed October of 1940 during the Battle of Britain. To this day, I get goosebumps just thinking about it, because I heard Fury, I heard Sergeant, and Sergeant Alan Fury, I've looked him up myself, flew for 609 Squadron. He was actually an ace. Got five kills, and was killed in October during the Battle of Britain.
Anybody come and say hello to me?
Now, that means something to me, because men, I don't care if you're English, American, Canadian, the service to our countries and the sacrifice they gave always weighs heavy on my heart. And to hear the fact that we contacted a man that I would consider to be a hero during the Battle of Britain. He fought for his country, and we heard him. We heard somebody identifying themselves as him. And I heard it with my own ears. You heard it. My son heard it. Wow. Definitely one of my all-time best stories. So
I actually have a better experience from that airfield. And it's with a WAF. It's always with WAFs. I get on very well with WAFs. Yeah. We're in the mock-up of the WAF hut with lots of original equipment in there. And I'm sort of saying to the ladies, what's it like here, blah, 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 blah. And I suddenly thought, well, anybody fancy going down the pub this evening? And it comes back when I've processed it on the recording. Let's go now. Okay, we're in the WAF quarters of RAF Elvington. Can I ask if there are any ladies here? If you're here, just come and say hello for me. Can I take you out this evening for a pint? We're going to walk through. It's a lot more cosy than the men's billets, isn't it? What was it actually like here?
Yeah.
And I thought, I've pulled.
I'm going to tell Judith.
That's all right. She knows what the trouble I get into.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as the trouble that I was getting into at the barber shop. I can't remember. In Florida. In Vero Beach.
Oh, you mean the hair salon? Okay.
The hair salon
with B.
Oh yeah. I was getting in trouble there. Oh yeah. She was all woman.
There's a story I'd like to. The story I have from that place is. You want me to tell it real quick?
Real quick, and then I'll do the last one, which is the Roman.
All right. Folks, this one also hits home with me also, and I'm starting to tell the story now. I've told it on some of the tours because we take some of my historical ghost tours go through there. So several years ago, we're doing tours through there, and my son Evan, who does have the gift, turned to me one day and said, "Dad, there's a woman, and this salon is on the second floor of a rather narrow building." And he says, "Dad, there's a woman up there. She's got long dark hair, white dress, and she's very, very sad. She's trying to reach out to you, but you can't hear her." And I said, "Well, why is she sad?" I don't know, Dad. I just can't figure it out. Well, I never told that story to anyone because I couldn't corroborate it, right? Oh, just before COVID hit, we were doing another tour through there, and I had two young girls, about 15. They were part of a group, and they both come up to me as we were getting ready to move on and said, "Mr. Lawson, my friend here has to tell you something." And "What is it?" And this other 15-year-old girl points to that same window and said, "There's a woman in that window." And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute, Evan, come over here and listen to this." And Evan comes over, and the little girl says, she's not little, she's like 15, says, "Well, there's a woman in that window with long dark hair in a long white dress, and she's sad." Two stories, never been told before, two stories that are exactly the same. Well, last March of 2021, we made another return there. And Chris, when I take you on those investigations with us, I don't tell you where we're going.
Don't tell me.
I don't tell you where we're at. There's no history. You know nothing about it.
All you tell me is what time I've got to be online. That's it.
That's it. So we walk up,
and we don't even communicate broadcast to everyone. It's just in your headphones.
Oh, yeah. Well said. I have my headphones on. Nobody can hear me or hear you but me, right? So we're doing, and you do a walkthrough with us, and you describe B. That's what. B, kind of like a Mae West type of woman, is a gun in your pocket. Are you happy to see me type of lady? Okay.
He's a big boy.
And then you proceeded to say, "And there's another woman here. Long dark hair, long white dress, and very, very sad from the loss of a child." Remember?
Yeah. And her name was Jenny.
Three different people describing the same person being sad. You're the only one that was able to give definitive information, but you're a little more experienced. But that wasn't all for that. That in itself was impressive. But the other part was the third woman you met there, kind of a cranky old lady that didn't look at me very kindly.
I was sort of scratching my head on this one, thinking I don't remember another one, but I do now.
Yeah, this one hits home. Lady cranky. She looks at you really meanly. We'll just put it that way. Like she doesn't much care for you, and she's a religious zealot. And she just doesn't like you at all. And then we went on. Oh, and you said, "Oh, and her name was Florence." And I said, "Okay, fine." We went on. Kept it all to myself. We get towards the end of the investigation, and you told me, "Oh, that Florence is back." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, what's going on?" Well, her demeanor's changed. She's actually acting. I'm getting the feeling she wants you to forgive her, and she wants you to light a candle for her. And I said, "Well, that's interesting because, Chris, I'll tell you why. My dad married my mom, and my dad came from a very strict Catholic family. His mother was a very strict Catholic. I mean, an over-the-top, super, very religious Catholic, very strict Catholic. And she never liked my mom because my mom was Protestant. In fact, I found out later in life she didn't even publicly recognize us as her grandchildren because we were not born of the Catholic faith, and she was a zealot." Oh, and Chris, by the way, her name was Florence. You described my grandmother physically. You described her personality-wise. You described her physical stature, and you got her name right. How does that happen? My grandma died in '74, and I really believe she had felt bad at how she treated us, and she wanted us to So,
well, I haven't seen her since. I've seen your grandfather and I've seen your father, but not your grandmother.
But here's the kicker. Have I ever told you about why would I tell you about my grandmother who died in 74? I mean, there'd be no reason for it. Yet you got it all right. Folks, this is the type of stuff that you can't explain how it happens. And it did that night. And one of the most important stories in my work in this field, not to mention probably my life. So thank you for that. So I'm sure that this is the first time I've talked about it on some tours, but I've never talked about it publicly like this. So y'all are the first to hear it. So anyway,
you want me to wrap this up with the painted house?
Wrap it up with the painted house.
Painted house at Dover. I was working with the Kent Archaeological Rescue Unit in 1978 to late 1979. When the weather was bad, we'd go into the Roman painted house, which was one of the parts of the unit. They'd excavated this before. There was a purpose-built museum. We'd go in and we'd unibomb the walls to stop the plaster coming off, and we'd sweep up and we'd paint the walls and we'd mend the toilets and we'd do all the winter maintenance of this building, going up on the roof and sweeping the leaves, everything. Now, when we'd actually been in, I'll go back slightly. The painted house survived to a great height with wall plaster on because at some stage the Romans built the shore fort right through it. And the shore fort is built with a wall and then an earth bank coming down from the wall on the inside. And the painted house survived inside this earth bank. And it's beautiful. And I will put some images up here. Now, what we used to do is when we were working inside, you do the job for the day. And as you come out, at that time, the corridors were lined with sand. So you could see where the floor level roughly was, but it was just sand. And as you went back, you'd brush it over with a broom, soft broom, so you didn't get footprints all over the place. So it just looked nice and neat and clean and tight, like a museum should. So it was lunchtime. We've all evacuated the building. 2 people are left in there. And we decided we're going to the pub opposite the place and we're going to have a couple of beers and a sandwich, and then we'll come back afterwards. Perfect lunch. The other 2 joined us in the pub. We spent a bit longer than we should have. 2 beers later, we came back to the building. It was open. They've still got the keys. 1 set of keys. They've still got the keys. They locked it. Put the alarm on. Alarm's off. Building's open. Someone's in. We go looking around this building, and then someone, I can't remember who, said, "Look at that." And up this corridor that leads into the building, there's a set of footprints marching in to the building itself. Not us. We cleaned it.
And no footsteps coming out.
Nothing coming out, just 1 set going in.
Now that's a good story.
Another one of these nice physical things that we get. I love physical. I love getting this stuff. I mean, there's no photographs. I mean, who had a camera then? Nobody had phones. 1978.
Yeah.
So you're just looking at this going, how on earth did that happen? And we searched this building. There was no one in there. No one. Nothing.
Definitely a cool story.
Yeah. So I thought you'd like that to end with.
That's a great story. And once again, it begs the question, how do you explain this? How does this happen? And it's because of what happens on the other side. I mean,
it happens, doesn't it? It just happens.
Stuff happens.
Stuff happens. That's a polite way of putting it. Stuff happens. But it just does. It just, and usually when you're not expecting it.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, one more. We've got time for one more.
Okay, give me one more.
Didn't happen actually to me, but it was reported to me when I went to the place. Okay. First time I visited Stanhope Hall, which is up Weardale, 7-8 miles away from me. I was talking to the owners, and they'd had all sorts of things, seen all sorts of people in there walking around, and monks in the garden, and whoa, yeah, brilliant. So I'm thinking, oh, there was an interesting thing a few years ago. It used to be a restaurant, and they'd had some trouble with the toilets, and they could hear this rushing water, and it was getting water everywhere. This was coming from behind a sealed wall. You know, you make a plasterboard wall, all sealed, no access hatches, sealed up.
Right.
So they called the plumber in, and he goes in, and behind there's the cisterns and the pipe work and everything. And what he discovers is somebody has pulled the pipes out. Can't happen on its own. They have pulled the pipes apart. He had to break through with a hammer to get into it.
How does that happen?
Exactly.
Man. So always keep your mind open to things that you just don't expect. You can't explain. It can happen. So it's,
and always have the number of a plumber in your phone.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Well, with that, I think that's a great way to end today's episode.
That's been a good one.
I think it has, and we appreciate everybody we appreciate watching, everybody, you watching, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks for our next round of stories, events, thoughts, and ideas. And please like this show. Let us know what your thoughts are, and we'll see you next time.
And that's it from me too. So bye.
All right. Good night, folks. We'll see you next time on the other side.